Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and Mississippi State's playing football. I think they just started or they're starting soon. I'm going to have to watch that today. My wife's family's big Mississippi State. Her dad played there, and so it's just a part of what we do. All right, link to, folks, I've been loading up on PolySign recently. I'm planning to load up more. They've still got, I think, Ripple, Uphold, Link to itself's on there, some of these others. Go check it out. You can also, if you have an Uphold, now Link to is one of my sponsors, and so is Uphold. Uphold is where I buy my XRP. I was just on the phone with someone, and I was talking about what my plans are for 2023. Is as long as things are bad, what I'm going to be doing is I make sure I have a good cash cushion, and then I'm buying these dips. I'll be doing it with XRP. I'll be doing it with private equity. I'll be doing it with all the things that I've studied and I know. So I will be buying more XRP until this lawsuit is over. Who knows? Maybe it's the last time I'll have it. Now, we still have plenty of people making predictions. Okay, here's a prediction from BitBoy. 2023, the year XRP case ends and the Ripple curse is broken. Also, the year that Gary Gensler is forced to resign from the SEC. I like the sound of that. Now listen to this. Robert Kiyosaki, who's the rich dad, poor dad guy, who's a very smart guy, he warns that SEC regulations will crush most cryptocurrencies. Well, I think that's always been Gary's intention. He's going to come in to try to crush it. He's going to use these collapses like FTX to come in and crush it. And you really have to, the more you see of this FTX and the fact that Gary and his buddies were meeting with them, you really start having to wonder. So Gary's there with MF Global, and I'll show you some on this. He's there. He presides at the CFTC over MF Global. His lieutenants are there with him. MF Global collapses, and then that caused them to bring more regulations in. Now they preside over FTX, CFTC, and SEC, and then that's going to allow Gary to bring in more regulations so that Wall Street and he and his buddies get to control even more. Do you see what this appears to work like? Okay, so we got this. Then there's this. This is interesting. Look at this. Went through the archives today on XRP. There's a lot of things we've seen over the last few years that many of you have never seen, so I want to show them. I don't know who wrote this one correct. 2020 January is the target month according to the elites. The elites want their plans to be done by at least April 2020. It includes digital economy, XRP standard, reset, declass, removing corruption. Every infrastructure will be taken away from old guards to new elites. You won't get much from the mainstream media news since it will shock the world. Everything will happen so fast it won't be able to grasp their mind together. Watch Dow Jones, S&P, NASDAQ. It will be sudden out of nowhere. Then this one. There's one thing you do not see that makes you question reality, but behind closed doors at London R3, a new world awaits XRP. Before it begins, we want you out. Remember that without a doubt. When we smell huge opportunity, we then control the charts you see. Never before has it been this way, where mortals can stake their play. We are confident now. It's game on. So are you weak or are you strong? Well, the digital asset investor is strong. Don't worry about that. I've been strong since 2013. Listen to her when she speaks. She is the best source of leaks, but never forget that with all her clout, she too wants you out. It rhymes. Then this from Tony Valentino. Regulatory clarity will be the first major announcement. This will open the gates to many institutions that are waiting on the sidelines. We could easily see the market cap grow by a few trillion within weeks. Next step will be UN, IMF, Fed throwing their weight behind XRP. That would have to go in line with all that SDR talk. Now, this is interesting too. Look at this. Will 2023 be another up year for Bitcoin? This is the history of Bitcoin. 3 years up, 1 year down. 2022 was down. 3 years up, 2018 down. 3 years up, 2022 down. Is 2023 going to be a year? Now, folks, I am a contrarian investor, and I can tell you, but I'm also 48 years old. And if I can tell you one thing that I've learned, it is that when you have these scary markets that we've seen in 2022, it took me all the way till maybe one or two at crypto pullbacks ago to learn this lesson, to really learn this lesson. Keep cash on the sidelines and be ready when you have years like 2022 and accumulate the things that you've studied, the things that you know. That's what I did. That's what I'm doing. And I will keep doing them because the things I've studied, I keep accumulating. That's when the money's made. The money is not made in these bull markets. The money is made in the years like 2022. The money is made while everybody is terrified, but you know what you hold. That's when the money's made. I have learned from experience that is true. Cameron Winklevoss, this is talk about scary, okay? Earn update, an open letter to Barry Silbert. Barry, today marks 47 days since Genesis halted withdrawals. I'm writing on behalf of more than 340,000 Earn users who are looking for answers. Check this out. I'm not going to read this whole thing. You can read it. The idea in your head that you can quietly hide in your ivory tower and that this will all just magically go away, or that this is someone else's problem, is pure fantasy. To be clear, this mess is entirely your own making. Digital Currency Group, of which you are the founder and CEO, owes Genesis, its wholly owned subsidiary, $1.675 billion. This is money that Genesis owes to Earn users and other creditors. You took this money, the money of school teachers, to fuel greedy share buybacks, illiquid venture investments, and kamikaze grayscale NAV trades that ballooned the fee-generating AUM of your trust. All at the expense of creditors, and all for your own personal gain. It is now time for you to take responsibility for this and do the right thing. So this thing's getting nasty, folks. Then Barry Silbert replies, DCG did not borrow $1.675 billion from Genesis. DCG has never missed an interest payment to Genesis and is currently current on all loans outstanding. Next loan maturity is May 2023. DCG delivered to Genesis and your advisors a proposal on December 29th and has not received any response. Cameron Winklevoss says, there you go again. Stop trying to pretend that you and DCG are innocent bystanders and had nothing to do with creating this mess. It is completely disingenuous. So how does DCG owe Genesis $1.65 billion if it didn't borrow the money? Oh, right, that promissory note. Will you or will you not commit to solving this by January 8th? No, folks, let me tell you what. We've seen multi-coin karma. Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss are two of the guys that no matter how much we kicked and screamed and begged, they would never list XRP because these guys are ideologues first before they're businessmen. You will not see me crying for these guys. So whatever they're going, a large percentage of this industry has blatantly been against Ripple and XRP for literally years. These two guys were two of them. So I watch this and I just laugh because so many of them did so many things behind the scenes or out on social media that were anti-Ripple and anti-XRP. So I say karma is brutal. Now, speaking of karma, for 2 years we've seen Gary Gensler and his SEC argue in court to a judge that XRP has no utility. They've lied for every 2 of those years. And here's the proof. Gary knew back at MIT what the utility was.
Crypto Bitcoin to Philippine peso. That is called a bridge crypto or bridge currency. That's in fact what Ripple is trying to do with XRP. So Ripple is a company that started as a payment messaging service to compete with SWIFT. And that messaging service, which we'll talk about more Thursday, has been adopted by many banks. More recently, in 2018, they rolled out a prototype of using a crypto token, XRP, as a bridge currency. I would say yes, it is possible. I think there's an issue also about volatility. So if you're moving fiat dollar to crypto, Bitcoin, XRP to fiat, if you have a lot of volatility, that means it's a less it could be costly. But if it's stable value, so you can lower the cost two ways: lowering the volatility of the crypto, or lower the time. And XRP believes they have a solution that can be down to seconds, and thus even if it's volatility, that in seconds it won't move as much. And the friction will be that you have to sell dollars to buy XRP, and then sell XRP to buy peso, or you can interpose any bridge currency. One of the most significant opportunities for stable value tokens that we'll talk about in a few classes is...
All right. So he knows full well what the utility is. They've been lying in court and acting like they didn't, that it has no utility for 2 years now. Okay. Then you got this. Don't forget MF Global, folks, because not just Gary, but his lieutenants are the same freaking people that presided over MF Global and the collapse where there was commingling of funds and billions in customer losses were had. Gary was at the helm there too. And in this clip, this congressman is almost inferring that they intentionally looked the other way so that they could then come in with regulations after the fact. But it's almost. And remember, John Corzine, who ran MF Global, was Gary's boss at Goldman Sachs. Now, this guy right here is the same guy right here. Look, he's the general. He was SEC General Counsel. Berkowitz is his name. Dan Berkowitz. He was hired by Gary at the SEC. Then he was out having dinner and everything with the FTX guys, and Gary fires him, or he leaves the SEC. But there are no coincidences here, folks. This is the same guy that worked for Gary Gensler at the CFTC under the MF Global collapse. So watch this.
A person to take customer out of segregated
No. I understand what 125 does, but I also understand what doors it opened up. It allowed them to be into sovereign debt. It allowed in-house repos, and you've now closed those doors, which I think are fine.
Was amended.
Because I know what 125 did, but I also know how it was used. And that's why the door was closed. You clearly saw it as an open door. And I think that's fine, because it was, and I'm glad you closed it. But I got to tell you, it seems as though you were sitting on your hands for a year and a half when you knew you should have shut the door. You knew there was a problem. Had you acted precipitously, we wouldn't be here today because MF Global wouldn't have been able to do this. That's the way I read it. I wouldn't mind hearing a follow-up at a later time, but I have limited time.
Do you mean the same way that he and Gary Gensler were sitting on their hands? They're now claiming that FTT token is a security, but they sat on their hands. They obviously think it was a security, but they sat on their hands and did nothing, and they let this guy keep doing what he was doing. Are we noticing a pattern here? Congress, is it really a new day? And then there's this. This is John Corzine being talked. They're asking him if Gary Gensler, and you can tell just the way he answers it, that Gary Gensler was in conversation with him a lot more than he was letting on.
Now, another question. Trying to figure out how much involvement Chairman Gensler had in the early stages of the MF Global problems, you ask, I have this question. Prior to October 31st, did you have any discussion with Gensler about the state of affairs at MF Global and whether MF Global was in trouble? And when were those, and if you did have conversations, when were those conversations and what exactly did you discuss with Chairman Gensler?
Senator, Chairman Gensler may or may not have been on some of the joint regulatory calls where I gave updates to a broad set of regulators on the progress or lack thereof with regard to the sale of the firm, a posting on what our actions were in reducing the size of our balance sheet and generating liquidity. To the best of my knowledge, he was only on that 31st general call, but other than those postings to regulators, I'm not aware of any conversations with them.
So then at least you're telling me for sure that you did not have a one-on-one conversation with Mr. Gensler at any time?
To my recollection, I have not.
To my recollection, this is a playbook right here. When you hear, I do not recall, or to my recollection, this is attorney speak. And this is from the, you know, that woman that was married to that president who was interviewed, or she did a deposition, and she kept saying, I do not recall, I do not recall, I do not recall. I do not recall means I do recall, but I'm not going to say it in court. I'm not going to say it under oath. But I do not recall covers their butts. That's the phrase. Recollection, don't recall. That's how they do it. That's how they play the game. And then here's this from Charles Gasparino, my latest New York Post column. How Sam Bankman-Fried made off with regulators. See, so they keep on. It's just the same thing keeps popping up. You're suing Ripple while the one that's actually committing fraud you're meeting with and having meetings with. You're suing Ripple, okay, or you're meeting with Joseph Lubin, who still has disguised whales that we don't know about from the ICO. You're meeting with him while you're telling Brad Garlinghouse that you don't want to talk about XRP. Just tell us how your business runs. Are we seeing how this thing works? I'm not going to cover that, but I do want to show you this. Digital asset news. I just heard of a top 20 crypto project that is going to receive a letter of no action from the SEC in 2023. This basically means this project will be labeled as not a security. What do you think will happen to the price of that asset? Hint, it's not Bitcoin. Folks, any asset. In fact, digital asset news, if you're listening, I would love to know what we're talking about here. I mean, golly. But do you know what would happen? I mean, if anything would be corrupt, it would be for the SEC to hand one digital asset like Algorand, because Gary's buddies with the founder, a no action letter, and everything else is still in no man's land. That would be more corrupt even than what we've seen so far, if you can even imagine that. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, tell your friends and family. This is